Hello. This video is going to be about an Austrian identitarian leader called Martin Sellner, his journalist girlfriend called Brittany Pettibone, and what might constitute a hate crime. Oh, and some pretty terrible language emanating from somewhere in Luton Airport. All right, let's get started. Martin Sellner, the Austrian identitarian leader aforementioned, was supposed to speak in the UK over the past quarter. I think it must have been twice. They'd made arrangements, but each time the venue was withdrawn under threats of violence, external threats of violence, not their threats of violence. Finally, Sellner remembered that his mother spoke to him once about Hyde Park Speaker's Corner, which is an area of the park that got a special free speech royal charter in 1872 and thereafter became as traditional as an English tea time with scones and cream. So Sellner made an arrangement to take up the pitch last Sunday. But alas, he was stopped at Luton Airport on Friday together with his travelling companion and girlfriend, Brittany Pettibone. So far as I know, they were both transferred in handcuffs from Luton straight to an undesirable alien's holding pen in Heathrow. The cause of their detention was, in Sellner's case, the possibility that his public speaking might incite racial hatred. And in the case of Pettibone, the reason given was she was going to interview Tommy Robinson. This is the letter, and I intend to make another video going through it. The wording given for the refusal to enter the UK is as follows. I have reason to believe that you're seeking admission to the United Kingdom to interview Tommy Robinson, a far-right leader whose materials and speeches incite racial hatred. As I said, I intend to do an analysis of the whole letter, but for the present what I have to say is that from the ungrammatical format, it looks to me as if whoever wrote it was not a native English speaker, or at least had a very low grasp of English construction and a very poor grasp of logical progression. Pettibone and Sellner were held until Sunday, then put on a plane to Austria, which was where they'd been heading after Sellner's speech. I'm not a law expert, but I actually don't think that there could be a proper legal basis for either of those arrests. Therefore, the police couldn't have acted on their own initiative. The whole fiasco must have been ordered from some government office somewhere. But it was based, whatever it was, within the atmosphere created by the Racial and Religious Hatred Act of 2006. This egregious law was the third time lucky attempt by the Labour Party under Tony Blair, that great Democrat, to honour his promise to Muslim leaders that if they voted for him, he would do his best to put a stop to criticism of Islam, under the guise of the newly discovered thought crime of Islamophobia. We had all sorts of laws that would have dealt with such crimes before, incitement, for instance, harassment, libel, slander, menaces with threats, or is it threats with menaces, one or the other, that sort of thing. These are or were all crimes. However, sometime in the 1990s, people stopped thinking in terms of crimes and started thinking in terms of hatred. Yes, you were forbidden not just to commit a criminal offence, you were also forbidden to hold within your bosom the disorder of hatred. This is a quote from the Amnesty International report, Tackling Hate Crime in the UK. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people in the United Kingdom are attacked and harassed physically or verbally because they are perceived as different. By the way, the report then goes on to blame most of the recent hate crimes on Brexit. The problem is that hate can be defined in different ways and applied differently to different people. For instance, if I happened to be passing a Muslim preacher in the street and I heard him fulminating against Kafirs and I reported him, who is the one committing the hate crime? Him for making those comments, or me for hating what he's saying? The police have a problem here, don't they? And let's face it, not being all that bright a lot of the time, they would probably end up arresting me. And that's exactly what keeps happening to Tommy Robinson and his ilk. And it happened to Sellner and Pettibone last week. I don't know much about either of them, but whatever they are, they were not here themselves to start a riot or to call for death and destruction. And even if they were, they hadn't done it yet. And under British law, you're not supposed to be arrested for a crime before you've committed it. But we're changing our attitudes as a society. We're constantly assaulted by the press and the media by the phrase hate crime, and this is being drilled into our brains as something we have to think about as real. But it's not hate crime, it's crime when it is crime. Until then, there should be no legal way to define it. I don't know whether it's still on the books, but there was an arrestable offence known as going equipped. And it went like this. If the police stopped someone who was wearing a stripy sweater, a mask, and had a bag over his shoulder with the word swag on it, and they discovered that about his person there was a crowbar, a lockpick, and a set of skeleton keys, they could arrest him, or at least detain him, on the reasonable assumption that he was up to no good. But now, all you have to be equipped with is your own opinions. And somehow pathways are being engraved into our minds that hate crime is worse than crime itself. If anyone's accused of harbouring hate, then that's enough to head them to the slammer just in case it causes them to do something nasty. I'm just wondering where it'll all go from there. For instance, the word hate is at the bottom of the stack. Slightly up from that comes detest. Would a detest crime be more punishable than a hate crime, for instance? Of course, abhorrence would be even worse than that, with loathing close on its heels. Although I have to point out that sometimes abhorrence and loathing switch distances, like the orbits of Pluto and Neptune. So lawyers could earn a very good living conducting legal arguments about whether it's abhorrence or loathing that deserves the long drop. The thing about a crime is you commit the crime, then you go to jail. And after that, you get out and you're considered to have paid your debt to society. But if you go to jail for a hate crime, are you going to stop hating? Have you paid your debt to society? Or did you just bank it for a while and then, as with most banked resources, did you accrue interest?